It's 1:39 in the morning. It's been 2 years since I first opened this text that interests me greatly. And while my circumstances have changed, and to some extent, I think I've gotten more sort of understanding of the text itself. The fire of its interest still is there, even as I sort of begin to sort of peel back the layers that sort of coated this shiny silvery mystery, like shiny golden ticket of mystery. I do think that, anytime you're sort of looking at something, um, you look at it from your perspective, right? And, whether you take things at face value or not, that is still your perspective to take. And I think, as I sort of look at this and I sort of see like, the sort of these guys are very smart, and this is like a smart person's table, and I'm sort of sitting there with my ears open, as I've always been, and trying to sort of get a grasp at what it means, and what, not necessarily what I might contribute, but what how I can better understand things, right? And how I can better understand what is left to be understood, right? How far do we have to go? And I believe in my heart that that is ultimately both an instinct that reaches, I think, the depths of what we might say is, sort of that drive that we all have, presumably. And then also it takes it from a negativist approach, right? I've always said that I think solving mysteries, solving problems, regardless of your skill at them, um, is a very sort of, any evolutionary approach is a very sort of like, there's something there that we don't know, a lack of something. Let's fill that, right? So filling the gaps is always something that's evolutionary. So I think it's very interesting. But like I said, I mean, I think you look at a guy like, this book, and you see all the things that are wrapped around, and as I sort of stare into this abyss, waiting for the abyss to stare back. I don't even know the content. Well, am I totally butchering the meaning of that phrase? It's probably true, but it's interesting because there's this, like, everything, like, we talk about sort of everything we're doing is, hey, already been done. For some reason that popped into my head. Everything we're doing has already been done, but also, like, everything we're doing is, there's sort of this idea that, like, we look for something that we might sort of both understand and make a contribution in. In other words, what I'm saying by that is that, like, there's sort of this idea that your own propagation in any sort of, I don't know what I'm saying, actually. Let me backtrack. I'm gonna delete this. This will not be a video. I'm gonna try to get to 5 minutes though. It's interesting, right? It's interesting because I think that you know there's this, like, there's this idea that it's like your ability, your sort of, your mind, your restlessness, your sort of, I slept, just today, I slept longer than I think I've ever slept before in my life, right? And you might ask, like, why did I do that, right? I think part of it's a sort of not knowing what to do. I think part of it's a natural procrastination that I have with the stuff that I told myself to do, but that I don't really want to do, and B, don't really see the advantage in doing, per se, right? And so, there's this, like, I don't know how to describe exactly, sort of how I'm feeling at this very moment, right? I feel like I feel foolish, and I hope that's a good thing. Once again, the what Steve Jobs speech is ringing in my head. You know, stay something, stay foolish, right? Stay hungry, I believe. Stay foolish. I never have to worry about being hungry. In other words, I never have to worry about not being hungry, right? Um, I probably never have to worry about not being foolish either. And I guess like it's sort of this idea that like I think the biggest thing for anybody watching this, and I think the biggest thing that I think I need to tell myself is that to me that's my greatest strength. Is that weird? Is that weird? My greatest strength is that like I said, and I don't mean this. I throw caution anytime I sort of use the word great to describe me. Right? It's not literally great, and it's not even sort of a comparative assessment of my greatness as compared to others. This is an absolute. What I'm saying is that if you look at like I think what I'm most proud of, I think what made sort of like 2020 for example so special was that A, I was sort of like on my own, right? But B, I was reading a book that sort of spoke to me in a terms of that there's something for me to do, me the sort of layman, and B, something that gave me the notion that I possibly could do, right? And I'm telling you, no amount of money from anything else that I could do, whether it's sort of helping take down Dow Chemical with a sort of class action lawsuit or anything, nothing can compare to the staying hungry and the staying foolish, which I believe is embedded within a book like that. As sarcastic as it probably is, as much as I'm probably missing all the layers that I'm probably missing. At the end of the day, the sort of simple, sort of like 2 plus 2 equals 4.2, right? Did they know I was going to do 2 plus 2 equals 4? I don't know. You know, you get to 4. How do you get to 2? You see 4. How do you see 2? How did you get to 4 from 2? Right? Um, there's a gap, right? Is that? But the point is that like I don't know how much time I have left. I mean, I say that forebodingly, but I say that I'm exhausted. I get exhausted every day, whether that's because of some of the choices that I made or sort of the stances that I've taken, the reactions that I've had, everything I've done like a fool. And I think for the first time in my life, maybe I'm kind of proud of that, to be honest with you. And I just wish I guess I wish I knew more fools. Maybe there. We always talk about how there's a lot of fish in the sea. I don't know. I don't know. It's an empty pond. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But I do think that that's interesting, and I think I just wanted to say this because I'm coming off of like I said, I've got a goal to write a book, right? And I think to myself, first of all, like I'm not a really good writer, A, but B, like I don't really know what I want to write. I was thinking it's going to be a mystery, sort of these principles of sort of filling in a gap, et cetera, et cetera. But there's something about sort of like, the sort of, we talk about in MBTI, obviously, sort of extroverted thinking being sort of the doing function. In socionics, it's actually extroverted sensation. Maybe it's a combination of both that draws me to do stuff, right? But I think for me, I'm thinking to myself, like I've got 1,000 words, right, for this goal. I guess I'm sort of announcing my goal in a video, but it's interesting because like I could probably write it, right? Like I probably could, and I think I've always done this, taken this mantra to anything that I've done, sort of like I can do this. I believe. Is it going to be good? No. So there's sort of like, can you do a good job? Versus can you do it? And I think the focus, if you're telling yourself to do it, then you're not telling yourself to do a good job, right? I think that requires some planning. So it's interesting. The sort of ability to plan continually escapes me. I'm watching my I'm watching my I call her my girlfriend, but understand that the term girlfriend there is a sort of my term, right? And I think that, that's another problem. I think I speak too often in my own language and less often, especially when the language is borrowing from the English language. And it's like, oh. Anyway, I watched my online girlfriend and I'm watching her grow her TikTok account. And I'm watching how she's making the concerted efforts. In other words, she's doing what she needs to do to get a good TikTok account, right? I mean, she obviously has a strong base, and she's using Instagram. She's making interesting videos though. I don't, with all, like I said, with respect to her, I think she's a lot ahead of the curve of a lot of TikTokers, and that's just with respect to everybody. Now, what would I do with a TikTok video? I don't know, but I know that she makes interesting videos. They're interesting in my opinion, and so she's got that going for her. She's got the base going for her, and then she seems to be really making an effort to sort of a market that TikTok account, and be like I said, do the effort necessary to sort of interact with fans, et cetera, to grow TikTok. And now she's like over 100K, well on her way, right? And so, but it's interesting because, if we do compare that to myself, it'd be an unfavorable comparison. But I think what I might be able to learn from that is that you've got to come in with a plan, and you've got to be really serious about what you're doing. And I think for me, I'm serious about the fact that I want to have that under my belt, right? I want to have the sort of idea that I'm working toward what ultimately, obviously, I think when I was in high school, I had one book. Well, I actually had three books. I had three books envisioned in my high school, as I was in high school, that I wanted to write, right? The one was a book that was going to be turned into a movie. I had visions of myself being a star in that movie. It's going to be the Mr. Gilchrist, which I think is actually from Atlas Shrugged. It's going to be a little bit like Atlas Shrugged in a lot of ways. I think I copied Atlas Shrugged subconsciously. I subconsciously copied the idea of Atlas Shrugged, or at least my understanding of that idea, when I focused on the first book that I really wanted to write. And I was like, I'm going to write this. Now, when was I going to write this? In my 30s. So yeah, so that was that was sort of what I was going to. But for whatever reason, I can't write it right now. You know, and the reason I can't write it right now is because there's sort of this failure to launch syndrome. That it's like an apprehension to sort of just buckle down and write it, especially like where, because deep down I don't think I have the base that my online girlfriend has. It's very interesting. Um, to sort of, you sort of diagnose your problems, and I'm looking at my walls. What the walls are starting to bother me, by the way. Have I mentioned that before? I don't know. This I think I'm gonna put this up actually. But what's today? Tomorrow is September 4th. Today is September 4th, right? So that might be a good day to sort of come back, right? But maybe not. We'll see. It depends on how much I really feel like doing it. But what I would say in this video, and this is driving out because I'm just kind of talking now. I have no, so, the other, in the previous videos, I kind of had this intention to sort of draw out what I wanted to be sort of an empirical assessment of some of the things I was learning online and stuff. And that obviously, got me nowhere. No base. I have no base. That's the problem. That's my problem in life. I have no base. It's always good to have a base. I'm telling you. Foundations, right? We talk about foundations in the book. Um, but I think that's the point, right? Like I don't want to rely upon foundations in some way, but even though I will steal the foundations. Anyway, now I'm getting sort of. You can see my eye drooping because it's like. My point is to say that it's interesting because it's interesting in regards to, you know, I think there was a time where I did see myself in endpoints. I saw the tennis shot where I wanted it to go, right? And I think I was naive enough, maybe foolish enough. Is foolish naive? I don't know. I think I was foolish enough to believe that I could get there with a sort of minimum amount of effort. And that's my lesson, my sort of takeaway to anyone watching this video, to anyone like me. Because first of all, I mean, I think the big thing is the big qualifier is not anyone watching the video, but anyone like me, right? I think you're what you need to do is have a plan, have a base, have a plan, and have a sort of dedicated effort to sort of drive to that goal. It's not enough to have a vision. I think it's more important to have sort of what you actually want to do. So I'm then going to listen to the video that I was watching, maybe read a little bit about this book that excites me. It is exciting. And I've written about this recently, but not really writing about it. I just kind of thought about it a little bit. It's interesting because I'm like I think I've talked about this before in this video series. I'm the type of person that likes discovering rather than creating, right? And I think, we're past the point where I mean, I don't to the extent that discovery was ever sort of heralded. I can imagine what the gold rush must have looked like or the oil rush must have looked like. I can imagine what those things look like. To the extent that discovery was something that was always sort of that could be done. I think that's a sort of there's a philosophical question about that anyway. So it isn't necessary to be objective when you're discovering stuff, etc., etc. Um, all of that to say, for myself, right, and whether that is because of my personal makeup or whatever, it's sort of always so fun to just listen to someone else talk and teach me stuff. And it's like it's such a passive way to go about life. You don't want to be passive. You're never going to get to where you want to go if you're passive. But B, you're not actually contributing. You want to be creative, right? And so the push to be creative, I think, for me is like, I wrote last weekend. I wrote like a short story. It was terrible. It was rushed. I just kind of did it just to do it. The general idea was like, the thing about stories these days, probably maybe always, so cookie cutter, right? You can sort of make a template and you sort of have the next 15 years of your life, right? And no, if I'm not trying to knock anyone, I shouldn't say it like that, but it is interesting because there's sort of this idea that like, everything's sort of standardized, right? Shipping the day we had sort of shipping products. Now there's a good channel, right? You know, for example, like my channel. Why don't I do anything with it? Because I like talking. Like, and I'm so there's such a sort of disincentive to try. That's interesting, right? Maybe I'll put that as my question of the day. Like 17 minutes and 30 seconds into this video. Do you guys feel a disincentive to try? I feel disincentivized to try, and I think that might be a product of my makeup as a person, right? But there's something about sort of like the sort of inhibition to do something and put something out there because for you it seems so trivial, and then also the idea that like to try with something trivial that you don't expect to get sort of rewarded for is so difficult, to rely upon. And essentially, I don't know if it's sort of relying upon those external factors for your reward or not. I don't know. That's interesting, right? I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's something that I am grappling with. But I think at the core, though, I think at the core, there's sort of this idea that you find yourself in a position where you're required to do more effort than you're comfortable giving with anything, right? So what you want to do for success, at least, is you want to make sure that you put yourself in a position as you go through life. If I could tell myself, right, you want to put yourself in a position where the situation calls for the same amount of effort that you feel like giving the situation. And I think that's sort of one of the things. As you see my crooked smile. Crooked smiles for the win. I'm a crooked smiler, but I'm not a crooked lover. And more importantly, I'm not a crook. So anyway, with that, we're almost at 20 minutes. I love to give you guys the play-by-play of the time. You can see your YouTube videos. I don't know if you guys do that. Like, it's interesting too. I'm so interested in verifying this stuff. I mean, it's true. It is true that I am interested in sort of the empirical reification. And to me, it's reification, but it doesn't matter. We're going from a principle that we hypothesize, and we're trying to find sort of evidence for that principle in the real world, either applying it or giving examples or extracting from it. I guess technically we're sort of extracting from it, but I don't know. The point is that now in the interest of straightness. Not my hair though, obviously. But anyway, have a good rest of your time in life, people. I suppose I'm officially back with this video, and what got me back is thinking about the unknown and what can be known about the unknown, what should be known about the unknown, and what we might do to make known that which is unknown, presumably forever. I don't know. All right, bye.